For a Monday morning, the week before Christmas. Let's make it count, everyone. So it's Freshly Pressed, where we get to bring you the news analysis as we count down to Christmas. And I'm Sope Martins. I have got Olakunle and Chibuzor in the studio with me. Good morning, Olakunle. Good morning, Chibuzor.
Good morning. Good morning, Shope. Good morning, Chibuzor. Good morning is a merciful Monday, and welcome to the show.
You're banned. See, we'll take messy, but not that pun. Thank you, Chibuzor. Good morning.
Good morning, Shokper. Good morning, Lakunle. Good morning, Lagos.
Oh, by the way, gentlemen, so because obviously the World Cup was a final was yesterday, the fireworks went off and Argentina won. There's been real debate about Messi versus Ronaldo that people thought had been put to bed by this World Cup win, but apparently continues to live on. So I give you the floor. Would you like to say anything on that?
I think I I just feel privileged to have seen two great sportsmen compete. I
Hmm.
would not like to do a comparison.
You will do well in politics, my friend.
I'll follow Lakunle's cue.
Oh, you will be a great deputy president, my friend.
I'll just leave it like that. I think both of them are outstanding
Two
players.
great athletes. It will save us the headache of comparison. Let's just
They both have their merits. They both do their stuff exemplary well.
You know,
But
the
the World
people
Cup is
who
the
get
World
hit
Cup.
by cars the most, those who stand in the middle of the road. I'm just letting you know. All right, people, share your thoughts. Send your WhatsApp messages into 0809 440 981. You can also go over to youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos, where we are streaming live, and leave your comments up on the live chat. And you can use the hashtag Freshlypressed981 on Twitter to get your thoughts in as we tackle the topics for the day. And Inkapolo, I refuse to dead any discussion. Thank you very much. You can't tell me what to do. All right, from the nation now. More pressure on Obaseki Okowa, Udom, and others over 625 billion naira derivation cash refund. And the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project is doing the most, gentlemen. They've urged the nine oil producing states, the South states, governors to provide and widely publish details of spending of the oil derivation refunds of 625 billion naira, which were paid to Abia, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo, Rivers, Ondo, Imo, and Cross River states, covering this refunds date from 1999 to 2021. This was contained in a December 10th letter signed by the Deputy Director of SERAP. All right, Lakami, I shall ask you for your thoughts on this. SERAP saying, okay, this is a huge amount of money. What can you say you have done to show for it?
I think that over the last 6, 8 years or thereabouts, or maybe let me extend it to 10, the consciousness of the Nigerian had always been what this phrase probably captured: follow the money. And I think that is increasing by the day. So between 1999 and dates, when that derivation act was passed by the National Assembly, that states, the oil producing states, get 13% off the um, the income before the rest is shared according to whatever other formula for being the states producing the whatever. So, and over that a certain period, this money, even when it was agreed to be paid, hadn't been paid. And when it was even paid, the states, the beneficiary states, didn't even disclose. The federal government that paid the money did not disclose. The state that received it didn't disclose until the governor of Rivers a few weeks ago said the money I've been spending to invite people to come and do this is the money from this. So it brings to fore again the issue of accountability in governance in Nigeria. Governance in Nigeria appears to me to be like a black hole that once money enters, it just disappears, no trace. And then even the ones that we see are either over invoiced or poor quality of work done or killed along the way by politics or whatever. Now, the chief press secretary of Delta State is now saying that this matter is being politicized. I beg to disagree. This is not a matter. I think that he's the one who is politicizing it by asking these funny questions. But and also the same thing by his counterpart from Cross River State. I think that the ones politicizing this matter, they're asking unnecessary questions. The questions they're asking can be right in a different way. The question SERAP is asking in this report is also right. While you are asking the questions where you are earning less than another state, you should also be giving account of the money that you've been given to spend. Let us know how you have spent it. If you're even going to demand for more, let us see how you have spent 10 naira before you can ask me to give you 15 naira. That is how we know they do how accountability is done. That's how we know what you need the money for. But for the life of, you have a country where a governor is entitled to what they call security vote, which the law also recognizes that nobody can ask him to account for how the money is being spent. So those kind of black holes, if they are there, the people who should do this, they work to keep the governor or the executive accountable are all in the pockets of the governor. Look at this story also spoke about a certain amount of money that was due to local governments that the states received on their behalf. For the life of me, the money is never got to the local government. Who is going to account for that money? How has this money been spent? If it has been spent, can we see what's been spent on? Delta State, for example, just 2 weeks ago, we were hearing whether true or false that the state is owing pensioners, is owing teachers. So what have they spent this money that they received on? Meanwhile, at the beginning of 2016 or thereabout, in 2015 or thereabout, we hear that the federal government gave almost all the states a bailout to be able to pay salaries. So what has happened to these monies they received in all of this? So these are the questions that the states needs to answer. It is not about politics. Politics can be right. Accountability is also important in all of this. It is what you are able to account for now that can make me trust you to want to give you a higher responsibility. For example, the Delta State governor today is campaigning as deputy vice president, as vice presidential candidate of a party. How can I trust him enough if he cannot account for the one he's doing at the state level? How then does he think that if I was voting in this country today, I'll be able to trust him with a higher responsibility? The same thing applies to all of them across board. They need to be able to account for these things. This is one of the places to start for people to start to trust government. We know the general distrust we have for our government at every level in this country today. But if a governor, a local government chairman, a president comes out to say, hey, this is this, this is this, this is this, it can be reasonable, it can be unreasonable, we can argue, we cannot argue, but we can see that figures are being reasonably exchanged, that we can begin to trust them.
All right, let me just read this message. Naracello from Ogudu, who says, have they accounted for over 100 million paid to LGAs monthly? This money that's being paid to these governors is just a pinch of salt. And from the Premium Times 2023, we can't bear further attacks on our facilities. So the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu, has said that if these attacks continue, they may render INEC unprepared for the 2023 general election. A word that's supposed to, I'm guessing, incite concern over the upcoming elections. Chibuzor, what would you say to INEC's ability to carry out the elections, especially now that we've heard from the chairman?
So Mr. Mahmoud was speaking to a committee of the House of Representatives who are investigating previous attacks on various premises and buildings and of the national of INEC.
Mm-hmm.
At that point,
lots of arson going on.
Well, a lot of arson, a lot of fire, stuff was being taken away, things were being destroyed. And he basically spoke to some of the reasons why some of these things have happened. He spoke to some of the secessionist movements in the southeast. He's spoken to some possible secessionist actors within the southwest. And he's basically spoken to the fact that if these things continue, they would not be in a state of preparation ahead of the elections. They've had to replace PVCs. They've had to get plan for additional infrastructure to be able to cater for the elections. They basically had to do a lot of things to be able to meet the needs of Nigerians. And it's a bit sad because we look forward to the elections as a people as that opportunity for us to make a change to our current situation or make a change to the current government. If people keep destroying INEC infrastructure, it makes it more difficult. Already we're having issues with PVC collections, we're having issues with people getting to do registration. It means that the few funds that we have left that are going to INEC are being diverted to replace stuff that should already have been there. So he's basically making a public service announcement and asking that you know what, Nigerians should take that into recognition and help ensure that these things don't happen again. That's what he's telling the
I'm
House of
sorry, is
Reps.
it Nigerians that are
Well,
supposed to do this, or is it our security agencies that are supposed to do
so
this? If we've seen the concerted efforts, or if we've seen these concerted attacks, as the chairman has talked about, on the offices across the nation, why are we not hearing more in the conversation with regards to ramping up security around these offices?
one of the things I would say, and I deliberately use the word Nigerians because I think it's also, apart from the security forces who are primarily responsible, obviously, there is a joint responsibility by everybody to actually look out for these things. The security forces that we have today, we know are well stretched. We know the various issues. So, yes, they're going to do all they need to. Well, yes, they should do all they need to do to ensure that this INEC infrastructure isn't threatened. But we also need to ask ourselves, Nigerians, what is the most important thing for us? Are these elections important enough for us? Is our continued democracy important enough for us? Then maybe we'd also look out for things like this and try to do our own big parts to make things
What do
happen.
you mean by that?
The whoever is going to do arson, whoever is going to get involved in this comes from within our midst. That's what I'm saying. That's when I talk about responsibility of Nigerians. They're not going to recruit from outside the country most times. The police, for instance, or the security apparatus need some of this information to come from the people. Some of these things are happening around. We've had experiences where we've seen guys who sit on the street corners joining this arson and carry out these things, and nobody speaks. Nobody gives that information. That information is out there. So what I'm speaking to is more or less joint responsibility.
Okay.
Security forces take the lead, but people also should step up and make sure that this is our thing, and we have to act to prevent it from happening.
All right, let's move on now. So, the next story that we are going to touch on comes in from the Punch newspaper. Arrest politicians buying PVCs, and well, once again, we're hearing from the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, which has asked the president of the country to direct the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami and appropriate anti-corruption agencies to identify and arrest politicians who are allegedly buying PVCs, permanent voter cards, from Nigerians, and then to promptly bring them to justice. Lakunle.
I'm sorry, SERAP, I'm disagreeing a little bit. We don't need the president to direct the attorney general to direct any anti-corruption agency to arrest anybody. The constitution already clear, and the acts of the setting up INEC has clearly stated that this act is criminal, right? And if it is criminal, as INEC reported it to the police officially, as the police will claim that they are not aware. If they have, what is the police doing? We just alluded to the fact now that our police are stretched. We have only 350,000 of them. Out of that number, a third are doing bagman duties with these same politicians who are the bigger patrons of their superiors in all forms. Okay, so where does that leave us? It just goes back to tell us that it is a public service announcement again to say to our people, do not sell your voters card. The idea of buying and selling of voters card is actually not that somebody is going to vote on your behalf, because with the beavers you are not able to use somebody else's voters card to vote. What they are doing is that if I'm a politician in this area and one party is stronger than my own, and I know the people in that area are going to vote for the other party, I'm buying up the voters card so that the places where identified as the stronghold of my opponents, I will prevent them from voting in that place, so that my people where I am strong are the only ones who are able to go to vote. We will not be able to select the people we want in governance if we allow people to perpetuate this crime. So the first responsibility of care is to us and our people. Do not sell your voters card. If you sell it today, in the next 1 week, whatever amount you've been paid will be exhausted. And then where does that leave you? The problem that you probably use the money to solve will repeat itself in another 1 week after then, and you are back to square one. So let us use, that is the power we have. The process of recalling or impeaching or removing a non-performing elected official is so difficult. You would have to live with the pain of this mistake for 4 years minimum if you do sell your voters card. Please don't do it. Let our police do their job. Let INEC report these things as they know it is happening. And the amount that I see here that people sell the cards for, it's even ridiculous.
We
2,000
heard from the
naira.
Northern Elders Forum saying 2,000 naira
2,000 naira.
up north.
It's ridiculous. So what are you doing with 2,000? 2,000 naira will only buy you approximately 8 liters of petrol today. Yeah. Yes, I think.
Depending on where you're
Depending
buying
on where
it
you're
from.
buying from, the average cost now is about 215 or thereabouts. 215 per liter in a lot of filling stations in Lagos, 215 to 25. So about 8 liters. If you put that in your generator in one night, it is done. So that shows you how small the amount you are selling your right to choose your leaders for is.
Luckily, I suppose we would have to ask, the fact that people are selling their PVCs for that amount doesn't just speak to a much graver problem. So, are those the people who will be listening to you saying, don't sell your voters card
The bigger
if they're doing it for, I don't know, some bread?
the bigger problem than that big problem that you just described is the fact that the problem will get bigger. That's the bigger problem. Because if you allow such persons who buys your vote, 1,000 people's cards for 2,000 naira, he spent 2 million. When that person gets into governance, he's going to steal 10 times that to compensate himself for putting up the 2 million upfront to buy the cards anyway. And then he will say to you, you didn't vote for me. Why are you asking me questions? And that's why we can always go back to story one, no accountability.
All right, let's talk about what you have to say up on WhatsApp. Dami from Ikorodu says the inability of the government to handle the insecurity in the southeast is beginning to seem less about incompetence and more like malicious intent. Whilst Yinka Bolu says, simple question. Please explain and account for the allocations collected. And the governor is saying that we are politicizing issues. Coming from a governor, that was a point that was at a point highly critical of the federal government. It's a shame that since Wike has scattered the table, none of the accused governors have spoken in person to explain their side of the story. And I blame the federal government for releasing such monies and not making enough noise about it. Um, such as putting it in the center spread of a newspaper and even creating jingles about it. This message in Deja Vu from Lucky says, INEC should not be unfortunate. The attacks are condemnable, but to suggest that a few attacks will make you unprepared for the upcoming elections is just ridiculous. All right. Remember, keep on sending your messages in up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos and up on Twitter using the hashtag Freshlypressed981. I'll be reading more messages once we get back from this short break. It's quite loud. Let's have a look. I've been kicking against use of the US. Who's this one? James from Ikeja. By way of enlightenment, can the analyst please cite the law and section of law that empowers or justifies the concept of security votes being appropriated by the president and state governments without accountability? It was you that spoke on this story, right? It was you that spoke on the security. It was you that spoke on security votes, right? So that's the question they're asking you. You want to respond? Let me check Twitter. Has anybody noticed that Twitter keeps stopping? Is it just me?
Well, it has its little issues.
Because every time I go on Twitter nowadays, it tells me retry.
It did that over the weekend for me. Also.
It's been doing that almost for the past week and a half. Okay, studio. All right, and here we are back for more. And let's take a look at your messages. This one in James from Ikeja says, by way of enlightenment, can the analyst please cite the law and section of the law that empowers or justifies the concept of security votes being appropriated by the president and the state governors without accountability. He goes on to say hashtag military government, hashtag carryover, and that's James from Tony Street in Ikeja, he says. And Anthony Tony from Marine Breach says, now it's clear why particular candidates and leaders of his party have been kicking against the use of BVAS. Interesting stuff. All right, let's take another gander at the news, and this time around we're going to be talking about this article that comes in from This Day newspaper. CBN cash withdrawal limits will tame electronic fraud. We have heard now from the bank's director of payment system management department, Mr. Musa Jimo, giving this assurance yesterday in Lagos, who disclosed that, and I'm going to quote him now. Right now, they steal huge amounts of money, and then at about from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., they go to an ATM and withdraw everything. But right now, with the policy on limits, you would not be able to take as much, and the system will be able to trace and block such accounts before the money is taken away, and hence why we need more limits. Well, okay, you didn't say that part. I'm just extrapolating, Chibuzor.
Okay, so this is my favorite topic of the moment because I have concerns, not issues with the policy. One of the things I would say is that Mr. Jimo has given us a lot to look forward to, but in reality, when he says that this would prevent, what this does basically, limits do is prevent the amount of money that can be taken out at a given time. What we've seen and heard, unfortunately, is in instances where people actually are picked up, kept for extended periods of time, and the accounts are drawn down. Now, this wouldn't stop them unless the second part of what he said is that they have this system that allows them to trace and track, which obviously I like to see, because one of the things that baffles me till today about the card payment system is where you hear stories about people carrying POS machines and actually robbing people. And I find it very funny how you cannot track those transactions, because the entire idea is having of electronic transactions is the ability to trace those transactions down. And you have some of these issues that are trapped between the bank, somewhere in the banking system, even when you make reports, and takes months for the monies to be reversed back to the owners.
Thank you, Chibuzor.
And that's a big problem for me. So when you talk about traceability, you're just trying to, for me, the CBN is just stacking up their cards to try and prove their case at the moment. And we need to actually come out and tell Nigerians this is what is happening. I'm all for the cashless system. I'm all for making transactions easier. I shared one or two experiences I had over the weekend about how I did a transaction one day, and 2 days back I just saw a reversal. Now, that was one instance. The other one was I made a payment. I had to sit down in the shop of the person I made for 20 minutes so they could see the debit before they allowed me to leave their shop. We can't run a cashless system which is based on cards and transfers this way. There's that element of trust which will be lost. So what I think I need the CBN to do is go back, look at this policy in its entirety, look at the various touch points of this policy, and get them to work. There's a systems thinking that is lost in this process. I think the CBN are in a hurry to do this for whatever reason, but I think they also need to look back and say, hey, where are our partners that are going to make this work? We need to go to get cashless, but where are our partners? We need to educate. We need to put out the infrastructure. We need to make it work. But for them to come and say, hey, like, this is what is going to happen overnight, is going to solve all our problems, that's reaching. And we need to be very truthful to ourselves that it's not going to solve the problem of fraud and crime. What it means that you're just basically going to have to keep the person for much longer to get out the amount of money you need. And that's not the advantage of a person. So for me, I'm not buying what he's selling at this point. I'm not buying what he's selling. I don't think it works. They've spoken about other things that they've tried to do. They've put some interesting stats on the table saying, hey, transactions have reduced. Unfortunately, I can't verify that at the moment. But what I know is that we need to build a trust in that system. And it's not going to happen because of your increased limits. Already people have limits. It's only that they manage the limits themselves and they don't know how to manage it in most instances. But just because of you're not going to allow me to do more than 20,000 a day, it's going to stop somebody who wants to actually take money and says I have whatever amount in my account and to keep me for much longer. You will.
It's quite interesting because looking at it, looking at these limits that have been placed and that have been set, I wonder if it's not just going to inculcate a habit now of people actually just going to the ATMs daily to withdraw the money for
Yeah,
for a rainy day in terms of whenever there's now a lag or network error.
that's what
Something
will
along
happen
those
for a lot of
lines.
people. They basically go every day, make sure they hit their limit, stack the money somewhere, keep cash at home, which they didn't have to keep really.
Mm.
And those are the guys who have value transactions because the entire policy is supposedly targeted at those guys who are doing illegal transactions. The guy who's doing illegal transaction has motive, he has opportunity, he has a reason why he's doing it. He will find a way around it.
All right, now, very quickly, let's touch on this one from the Daily Post. National Assembly budget too low. So, the House of Representatives lamenting over the inadequacy of the National Assembly budget. We heard from the spokesman of the House of Representatives, Benjamin Kalu, who said that it can't function effectively with such a low budget. He says, and I quote, the budget of the National Assembly is low. We cannot function as expected by the mandate of the Constitution, relying on that budget. People can criticize it the way they want. Olakunle, does he have a point?
In the face value of it, yes, it has a point. But in the reality of where we are, can we be considering that we have a situation where we say that the money we spent for health, for education, for infrastructure development are inadequate? We speak every day to the idea that government needs to spend within its means. We speak every day to cutting cost of governance and so on and so forth. So if we're going to cut cost of governance, if we're going to spend within our means, if we're going to spend enough on education, on health, on infrastructure, those monies are going to come from somewhere. Where are those places that we can reduce cost so that the excess from such places can be diverted to those other places? One of them is the matter of spending on the National Assembly, rightly or wrongly, right? People have made suggestions, say, for example, don't make the National Assembly a full-time job. Make it what's the word? Make it part-time, some kind of that will reduce the cost of governance. Whether rightly or wrongly, there are arguments out there for this, but I don't think that at this time of our national life, we should be thinking of increasing the budget of the National Assembly. Should be part of the sacrifices that the members of the National Assembly are also contributing to the survival of this country in terms of funding, right? Whatever they have now, they should live within their means. They are telling us, the people, to live within our means. They should also live within their means of what they have right now and still do as much as they're supposed to do for us.
Show us how it's done.
We want, exactly. We want to thank them in advance for doing that for us because, I mean, we cannot afford to do anything bigger, spend anything bigger than we're already spending on National Assembly today by the numbers we know.
All right, and lastly, let's just talk about this very quickly, Chibuzor. Population may hit 400 million by 2050. In from the Punch, according to the Minister for State for Health, Joseph Ekumankama, who has said that this is, by the way, without effective population policies to reduce our high fertility rates. I mean, we don't have non-tuplets like they do in Mali, but, well, we're pretty fertile.
So, unfortunately for I think it's the minister, or unfortunately for the minister, I don't think everybody's on the same page as he is. There's been discussions to try and reduce, obviously put pegs to the limits of children, even try to, there's been those discussions. There's a part of the country, and well, there's some, I wouldn't even say part of the country, there are some people who have been against it, actively against it. I remember there was some lawmaker that showed us his family of about how many, he had a very 27 children.
4 wives.
And he basically spoke about the positivity of having, having large families. And that's a mindset that's already on ground. So if he's going to rely on this type of people to pass the laws, then it's a non-starter. The first thing, and the first problem we also have is that the 400 million number is based on some number that we can't even verify as of today, which is the basis of why we can't even plan, because we don't even know who we're planning for. So when we keep on throwing out these numbers, at times throwing out these numbers for me are a bit tiring because there's no basis for the numbers. We're just extrapolating from one point and saying, hey, you know what, we are giving back to X number of people. And this is funny for a country that has a life expectancy of about 58, which is your average life expectancy. So you're looking at, obviously, population increases plus minus deaths. And if you're having a lot of people dying at early ages, how many people are you giving birth to? You can't, in 2022, we can't even account for everybody we're giving birth to in Nigeria today. You don't have the data.
Mm.
So where this guy is picking these things up from? So that's one of my problems. We need to take a step back, stop focusing on the numbers, start focusing on how to get actionable data, and start planning. Let's know that, hey, our budgets, for instance, like the stories directly paid for, cannot cater for this people. Let's start planning for it.
All right, we have come to the end of the show. Chibuzor, are you on social media? Do we have your handle?
Yes, I am.
Yes, what is it?
So on Twitter, on Twitter I'm Chimanu2000. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think on IG I'm ChimanuTD. So ChiManutD.
We see what's
Yes.
called your support.
Yes.
And Olakunle. You can find him at Olakunle70. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me for today's Freshly Pressed. Coming up, it's going to be sports. We'll be talking the World Cup. That's in the locker room, and that's at 8:15.